You know, it's one of the most famous cars in the world. But the story behind those stainless steel panels and, of course, the gull-wing doors? Well, it's an absolute roller coaster of ambition, collapse, and a bizarre twist of fate that nobody could have seen coming. So let's get into the incredible story of the DeLorean DMC-12.
And that, right there, is the big question we're digging into. Let's be real. The DeLorean was a total disaster, commercially speaking. It was slow, it was riddled with quality problems, and it completely bankrupted its creator in this huge public scandal. So how on earth did this massive failure become such a beloved global icon?
Okay, so to really get the story of the car, you've got to understand the man who dreamed it up. The brilliant, charismatic, and, well, deeply unconventional John Zachary DeLorean.
Now, you really have to appreciate just how successful this guy was inside the very system he ended up hating. He wasn't some scrappy outsider. He was a corporate golden boy at General Motors. He created the GTO, practically inventing the whole muscle car thing, and he was on the absolute fast track to run the entire company.
And yet, he just walked away from it all. He couldn't stand the corporate drone culture. See, he was convinced that American car companies were just building junk that was designed to fall apart. You know, that whole idea of planned obsolescence. So in 1973, right at the absolute peak of his career, he quit to go build his own company from the ground up.
And his plan wasn't just to build another car. No. He was going to build a better car, one based on a pretty revolutionary idea.
He had this big idea he called the ethical car. And honestly, that phrase sums up his whole philosophy. A car that wouldn't rust, that wouldn't fall apart, that you wouldn't have to replace every few years. It was basically a middle finger to everything Detroit stood for at the time. I mean, the ambition here was just off the charts. The unpainted stainless steel looked like it was from the future. Those gull-wing doors were straight out of a sci-fi movie. And DeLorean, he hired the absolute best. Giorgetto Giugiaro, a design legend, and Colin Chapman of Lotus to engineer the chassis. On paper, this thing was a masterpiece.
But, and this is a big but, turning that incredible dream into a car you could actually buy? Well, that's where the problems started. And I mean big problems.
Okay, so this slide really lays it all out. This is where the whole dream just slammed into a brick wall of reality. The vision was incredible, but the execution was a mess. The car that was supposed to last forever was famous for its electrical failures. That cool stainless steel body was a total nightmare to fix and showed every single fingerprint. The iconic doors? Yeah, they often got stuck. And maybe worst of all, the engine was this wimpy 130 horsepower V6 that was just embarrassingly slow for a sports car.
And you know, a huge part of the problem came down to where it was built. DeLorean got a ton of money from the British government to build his factory in Belfast. They were desperate to create jobs there during the Troubles. The catch? The workforce was mostly inexperienced, and quality control, yeah, that was pretty much a disaster from day one.
So you add all this up and what do you get? A total downward spiral. With terrible sales and costs piling up, the company started hemorrhaging cash, and that pushed John DeLorean to a point of absolute desperation.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It shows you how incredibly fast this whole thing crashed and burned. The car goes on sale in '81. A little over a year later, sales have tanked. The company is burning through millions of dollars, and by October of '82, it's game over. John DeLorean gets arrested by the FBI. We're not talking about a slow bleed here. This was a nosedive.
And this was the quote that blew up everywhere. This is what DeLorean actually said on a hidden FBI camera while he was looking at a suitcase packed with cocaine. He was trying to set up a $24 million drug deal to get the emergency cash he needed to save his company. Just unbelievable. The guy who wanted to build an ethical car was now on tape, caught in a massive cocaine sting.
And the crazy thing is, he actually beat the charges. In 1984, a jury bought his argument that the FBI had basically entrapped a desperate man. But let's be real, it didn't matter. It was a completely hollow victory. By the time that verdict came down, the DeLorean Motor Company was already dead and buried, the factory was shut down, and the whole dream was over.
So at this point, the story should be over, right? The car should have been nothing more than a weird footnote in automotive history. But then, in 1985, Hollywood made a phone call, and absolutely everything changed. To really grasp how close this car came to just vanishing, you gotta remember how rare it was. Only about 9,000 of these things ever actually rolled off that assembly line in Belfast. It was a really rare car from a totally failed company.
And then this happened. This was the lightning in a bottle moment that changed everything.
The filmmakers picked the DeLorean because, well, it already looked like a spaceship. The very things that made it kind of weird in the real world, the stainless steel, the crazy angles, those doors, made it the absolute perfect time machine. A commercial failure was about to become a pop culture legend.
Which brings us to the final and maybe strangest chapter of this whole saga, where the machine's legacy completely and totally eclipses that of the man who made it.
Yeah, after he was acquitted, John DeLorean's life just fell apart. It was one lawsuit after another, bankruptcy, he never bounced back. The guy once had a penthouse in Manhattan and a massive estate, died in a small apartment, his name just forever tied to scandal.
And yet, at the same time, look at what was happening with the car. A vehicle that was sold for 25 grand and pretty much considered a piece of junk can now easily go for over $100,000 today. It's insane. The creation became so much more successful and loved than its creator ever was in his final years.
So in the end, the car's legacy is totally secure. It's amazing how many of them are still around. They're cherished by owners clubs all over the world. And thanks to a flux capacitor and a quick trip to 88 miles per hour, the car became something its own creator never could be: immortal.
And that kind of leaves us with this one last big question. The DeLorean story is this perfect storm of genius, arrogance, and just plain dumb luck. But it really makes you wonder, if the car had been just a quiet success, would anyone even remember it today? Or was it the spectacular, headline-grabbing failure that actually cemented its place in history and made it unforgettable?